So that was the best introduction I've ever had. I hope some of it's actually true. Um, Before we get started, back row in the center, what's your name?
My name is Logan Burns.
Logan, thank you for not wearing a tie. David, why are you wearing a tie? That's an easy question. That's a softball, man. I got some tough ones coming. Why are you wearing a tie?
Because you have to wear a tie for a high school.
Okay, well, we're not at High Table. Take that shit off. All of you, wearing a tie, take them off.
What if you like the style?
Let me tell you why I think it's a bad idea, and then you can decide if you want to wear it. Ties impose an artificial barrier that doesn't need to be there. I want to build a relationship with you guys. I'm not going to give a speech. I want to talk to you guys. The tie makes you more stiff. Your back is straight. You're sitting up. You're very professional. That is somewhat symptomatic of wearing a tie. It makes us more stiff. It makes us more reluctant to relax and build a relationship. I don't own any ties. Can't stand them. Won't wear them. You guys go through life and decide if you like them, but I don't think they're helpful. I don't think they're comfortable either. David, take the tie off.
I am that's funny.
Yeah, and I understand they're going to rebuild this building. You might encourage them to invest in air conditioning. That's something England really needs. All right, good evening, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be, for the first time in 400 years, if you want to have a banquet in the Trinity dining hall without ties, come on. Your choice, entirely your choice.
All right, guys, thank you very much for having me. This one's going to be a little bit different. I know most university speeches are inspiring things that tell students to reach for the stars, that you guys can achieve anything, that your generation will inherit a bright and wonderful future. I'm not going to do that. I fear instead that your generation will inherit a disaster. So I'm going to spend the next half hour discussing all the ways in which you and your peers are screwed. Before you set out into the world, seeking to build lives off of your well-earned degrees, allow me to thoroughly depress you by sharing some of what you're going to be up against. The future is not your friend. Your parents and grandparents have seen to that. Your family probably didn't mean to screw you over. I'm sure they're lovely people. But from wrecking the climate to using up most of the world's resources and overfishing the world's oceans, one might think they'd actually set out to make your lives as difficult as possible. The dystopian horrors Hollywood is so fond of may not be that far off the mark. Let's begin with Walmart. A mere 10 years ago, Walmart was the world's largest retailer, with more than 6,000 brick-and-mortar shops worldwide. Today, Walmart has been knocked from their once unassailable position as king of low-end consumer products, and the new leader in global retail sales operates no permanent shops. Now, for those of you familiar with Walmart, this seems like a really positive change, but it will have dire consequences. 10 years ago, Hilton, world's largest hospitality company, operating more than 4,000 hotels worldwide. Today, the world's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. And of course, today, the world's largest taxi company owns not one single taxi. The world has changed. What do all of these changes have in common, and why should you care about them? Easy. They all mean fewer jobs. Those changes are but a tiny glimpse of the labor disruptions my generation will inflict upon yours. You're welcome. But that's only one of the unprecedented challenges your generation is going to face. I'd like to begin with a short-term forecast by Britain's own Economist Intelligence Unit. Their latest global risk index listed the following as some of the top risks to the global economy. China experiences a hard landing. The UK votes to leave the EU. Donald Trump wins the US presidential election. By now, I'm sure you've all had your fill of so-called experts yammering at you about what Brexit will mean to the UK and to the world. The last thing you need is some yuts from Atlanta popping in here to do more of the same, and in truth, that challenge pales in comparison to others you're going to face. And Donald Trump, America's orange-hued genital wart, may well win. But unless Theresa May bruises his fragile infantile ego and he decides to nuke London, your friends here at Oxford won't be nearly as afflicted by him as we will across the pond, so I won't dwell on him either. We'll focus instead on two other dangers. The one the economists nailed, and the one that they failed to include on this list, as it's a less immediate threat, but one that will have far greater impact on your future than Brexit, Trump, or your ex releasing compromising pictures you thought were securely stored on your phone. Let's talk about China and robots. That sounds like a plot line for a trippy Will Smith sci-fi thriller, but it's not. And I'm going to go into far more detail on China than you really ought to hear, so if any of you are hiding a flask of scotch in your coat, now's the time to whip it out. Please save a little bit for me. Does everybody know what FDI is? Okay. FDI is foreign direct investment. It's money that comes into your country from abroad. It is absolutely critical to the global economy and is probably a greater barometer to the world's economic health than just about anything else. According to UNCTAD's Global Investment Trends Monitor, global FDI flows jumped a whopping 36% in 2015 to 1.7 trillion US dollars. Last year's surge in global FDI disproportionately benefited developed countries who saw a 90% jump over 2014 levels. The rich get richer. Now, much of this has come in the form of cross-border mergers and acquisitions with only a limited contribution from greenfield investment projects. And I think that's unsustainable. On the plus side, according to the UNCTAD report, developing economies saw FDI inflows reach a record 741 billion US dollars, an increase of 5% over 2014. And developing Asia attracted the largest percentage of FDI in the world. That's the good news. The bad? Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean saw big drops, with commodities exports dragging down entire economies. And 2016 projects to be even worse, not just in the aforementioned regions, but globally. I know a lot of these slides are really detailed. I'm pretty relaxed. If you guys want to stop me in the middle, ask questions. If you want me to go back on one, holler at me. If I don't hear you, throw something at me. The UNCTAD report included this dire warning. Quote, barring another wave of M&A deals and corporate reconfigurations, FDI flows are expected to decline in 2016, reflecting the fragility of the global economy, volatility of global financial markets, weak aggregate demand, and a significant deceleration in some of the large emerging market economies. End quote. The economy most likely to drag us down. China. For years, global economists have mused that when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. China is about to have a sneezing fit, and it can rightly be speculated that China's coming illness will infect us all. And that's without even factoring in the catastrophic effect. Now, as we all know, for a population to sustain itself economically, it needs an average birth rate of 2.1 to 2.2 children per couple, what economists like to call the population pyramid. When viewed as a chart, it will look something like the top pyramid here. An aging population, one in which the economy will have more retired pensioners draining an economy than productive workers supporting it, will look much like the bottom left, and a stagnant economy will look like the bottom. Are not pretty. And by 2030, it's going to get really scary. Their now discarded one-child policy may well have been economic suicide. That sucks for the Chinese, but should you really be worried about China? Well, the Chinese are worried. And since what happens in China will impact your future, you should probably be worried too. As this chart demonstrates, by 2030, half of China's population will be 70 or older, which is twice the global average. That top line is Japan's. Japan is utterly doomed. Japan has already had their impact on the economy, so we're just going to focus on China.